Hey there, I just wanted to answer your question or at least give my input on it. I'll try and be as brief as possible, even though I do feel like this really is a deeper discussion. But basically, I believe that we are physical beings with spirits and that we live in a physical world, but there's also unseen forces that are in our world that impact us and affect us, and we are connected to these things, right? So every thought, action, word, emotion that is uttered, there is a spiritual ramification. There's something that happens on a spiritual level, whether you really recognize it or not, whether you readily understand it or not. So for a lot of these things that we call emotions or, negative thoughts, negative emotions, positive emotions, a lot of these things are really spirits. They are entities that exist in the spiritual realm that play a role in why you have this feeling. Are they the only reason? Absolutely not. Our lived experiences can also, lead to certain thoughts, actions, words, and behaviors as well. So the two work together, the spiritual and the physical work together. So that is key for understanding this viewpoint. So, for example, let's say as a kid, you used to play on the playground, and when it came time for team sports, no one ever chose you or you were chosen last. And that really, really hurts you. So, on a physical level, you're calling that hurt. But on a spiritual level, a wound is forming in your soul, something that you could call like a hole in your soul or a soul hole has formed. So, there's this wound now of being rejected by your peers. This wound can manifest in several different ways. Maybe it could be you don't really trust people because you feel like they're going to reject you. It could show up as, it could show up as anxiety. You get anxious in big groups because you feel like, man, what if everyone turns on me and it'll be just like on the playground when no one wanted to pick me, right? So it will show up as these things that we call emotions, and it's very helpful on a physical level to do things to kind of build up your confidence again. But on a spiritual level, that wound is still there, that trauma is still there. That's why you have to really go deep in order to close up that hole. When you don't close up holes in your soul, what happens is one, it remains open, but that invites for these entities that exist that are not necessarily good ones to take root inside of your spiritual house. So let's go back to the physical for a second. So everybody, let's say you have a house, okay? If somebody break into your house, what do? What you go ahead and fix the damage, right? You go and get a repairman, fix that window, fix that door, make sure it don't happen again. You don't go, oh well, because it's broken, I'm gonna just leave my doors open. I'm gonna just leave the door open. I'm gonna leave the window broken. No, you don't. On a spiritual level, however, unfortunately, a lot of humans, when we experience these wounds from people or events or from experiences, we don't actually fix the window. Maybe we patch it up with we do a crappy patching job, or we just leave it open. But what happens on a physical perspective, if I leave my house with a broken window, what happens? Any old thing gonna come up in there. That's what also happens on a spiritual level to you as a human. When you as a spiritual house leave your doors open, any old thing come up in there. So it is not a normal state for that house to be broken. If you see a broken abandoned house, you don't go, "Oh, that's chill. That's normal. That's how houses are." No. So same thing with humans. It should not be normal for us to have so many holes or broken windows, right? But we have normalized that as a society because a lot of us weren't given tools when we were kids to deal with stuff we went through. So, or we're dealing with, or didn't really fully realize what we were going through until we get older. And then we can kind of get the language and understand, okay, this is what that is, or that is why, because of this, that's why I'm like this, right? So that's why when we're older, a lot of these things start connecting more. But a lot of it does stem like from when we were kids or younger in life, right? So, as humans, it's normal for us to feel the whole range of emotions. But when certain emotions, like anxiety, like depression, take larger chunks of our time and of our life, that's when we do kind of have to have a question about maybe this is not a normal state. Maybe this is not just a temporary fleeting feeling. Maybe this is actually a window that is broken and that needs repairing. So if you're somebody who struggles or repeatedly continues with this thing, there is a chance that there is a soul wound that has not properly been rectified or dealt with, or where you've actually been able to kind of work it out on a deeper level. And I know people say they go to therapy and stuff like that. I feel like sometimes therapy is not deep enough to deal with some of the issues, because some of the issues people dealing with is generational, and it's all kinds of layers to it. But therapy can still be very helpful. Now, when we look at the image of God, and God is this beautiful, amazing being, right? And we look at what anxiety can often do to us. It often can cripple us. It can make us miss out on opportunities and connections that are meant to make us into better people. Then it is fair to say that anxiety is not of God, right? That is not a spirit or a spiritual entity that comes from the higher power, that is coming from another place that isn't God. So when people are attaching the D word onto that's what I believe they're saying. They're not saying you are, or are of that world. They're saying that spirit that is playing with you effectively is not of God. And because a lot of us have soul wounds and wounds in our spirit, and we are going through life and we're trying to figure things out, that entity is taking advantage of these holes that it sees. And like I said, with the broken windows, you have a broken window. You are not broken, but there are some broken windows. Let's get that correct. There are broken windows. That entity is now all up in there, is because there's a hole. So it's going like, oh, she got room for me. Let me go ahead and lay my head down here, because there's a hole here that hasn't been repaired. If you are trying to close that hole or lessen the impact of the damage that that hole has on your soul, it might not be helpful for you to constantly be listening to things or speaking things that might actually be strengthening that spiritual entities hold over you in that way. So that is what I believe people are talking about when they mention that this song might be inadvertently making things worse for you, or inadvertently making it harder for you to deal with that emotion. So for example, I currently struggle with depression. I don't say I am that word or I have that word, because am and have imply a state of permanence. And I believe, because I'm made in the image and likeness of God, that this is not a normal state that I'm in. Even if I've been in this state for all my life, I don't believe it is a normal state. I believe that all my life I've had events and traumas happen to me that have kept me down, and had wounds in my soul that have allowed for that spirit to take nest. But because I believe that I'm made in the image and likeness, I am not going to subscribe to the fact that that is a permanent state. My current state is not my permanent fate. That's how I view it. So because of that, am careful about listening to songs that talk about depression, or listening to lyrics that are just depressing, or depressing beats, because it might inadvertently be making my condition worse, right? And the tricky thing is, if it's a real emotion, humans should be able to express it, talk about it, and use art to express it. So that's where it gets kind of hard, because it's like, well, as an artist, I need to express it, right? Like there are sad poems, even if you read the book of Psalms, most of the book of Psalms is lament, right? So that is where it becomes very tricky dealing with this issue. However, I still believe there's truth in being cautious about certain words and things, just to make sure that you are not inadvertently, opening a hole or widening a hole instead of closing it, if you do believe that you actually can close that hole for yourself, which I do believe we all have the ability to do. And as for actually feeling this entity, or it feels like someone's watching you, in all honesty, you probably are actually feeling something real, a spirit. Honestly, that's what a lot of things that feel real, probably you actually are feeling it, and that might be a gift of yours to feel unseen things. But that is simply my take on it. Hopefully that helps, and let me know if you need any more clarification.